You perceive your environment as safe. You lock your doors, you trust modern medicine, and you naturally assume that the threats to your biology are visible. But we're here to examine a very different reality today. We build these walls to keep the wilderness out, assuming those barriers are actually going to hold. But what happens when the wilderness doesn't even need to break down your door? What happens when it simply drifts through the cracks, unseen and completely uninvited?
See, most pathogens need a really obvious way to cross into the human system. A bite from an infected insect, maybe a violent cough from a sick passenger on a crowded train. But what if the biological rules were entirely rewritten? What if the simple, undisturbed dust sitting in the corners of your own home was lethal? All it takes is a single breath of contaminated, aerosolized air in a closed garage, or just a casual sweeping motion over seemingly harmless debris to trigger a total systemic collapse. You don't see it coming. You just breathe. You just breathe.
When we actually look at the data for the Andes strain of Hantavirus in the Americas, we're confronted with a staggering number, a 50% maximum case fatality rate. This isn't some theoretical simulation, this is real. Half of the human systems infected by this specific pathogen shut down permanently, and the mechanism itself is horrifying. Your body is just overwhelmed by rapidly progressive fluid accumulation in the lungs. Your own inflammatory response effectively drowns you from the inside out, turning the basic act of drawing a breath into an impossible struggle. And yet, this brutal efficiency is really only the surface level of the threat. In our briefing today, we have to examine a terrifying crossing of a biological boundary.
Part 1. The Hantavirus Anomaly. Let's follow the timeline here. On April 1st, 2026, the MV Hantavirus, which is a luxury expedition cruise ship, departed from Argentina. By early May, the World Health Organization had already flagged a severe outbreak on board. By May 14th, 3 people were dead, and at least 4 others were critically sickened. Now keep in mind, this wasn't some rural, dilapidated farmhouse with poor sanitation. This was an isolated, highly sanitized luxury environment floating right in the middle of the ocean. And the data revealed something incredibly chilling. A human-to-human transmission event. A closed system was breached, not by rodents, but by the passengers themselves.
Historically, hantavirus has been confined to a really strict rule of rural rodent exposure. A person breathes in aerosolized droppings from a deer mouse, and the chain of transmission stops right there with them. It's a biological dead end. But the Andes strain, which is endemic to South America, has evolved right past that limitation. It has demonstrated the unique, frankly terrifying ability to spread from person to person, turning an isolated victim into a potential superspreader. The virus actually learned how to bypass the rodent entirely. It learned how to use us as the vehicle. Now, if human-to-human transmission was the only anomaly, well, that would be concerning enough. But recently declassified medical studies have revealed a far more obscure, mind-bending reality about this pathogen.
Part 2. The 71-month glitch.
Consider the chilling reality of this finding, pulled straight from the scientific literature. Quote, the Andes strain of hantavirus can remain detectable in human semen for up to 6 years after infection. End quote. Think about that for a moment. 6 years. This pathogen essentially hacks the human reproductive system so we can hide from detection in the testes, which is an immune-privileged zone. It literally turns the survivor into a biological sleeper agent, quietly carrying a microscopic time bomb. Contrast this with standard viral clearance. Normally, your immune system neutralizes a virus, or, well, you expire. It's a binary outcome. The battle ends. But this Andes glitch completely redefines what it means to be a recovered patient. For up to 71 months, that's nearly 6 years, it achieves a stealth state survival inside the host body. You could walk right out of the hospital, fully believing you've beaten the disease, completely unaware that you're carrying a dormant, potentially lethal payload that could theoretically be transmitted through sexual contact long after the initial fever breaks. So, what exactly is driving this biological glitch? To understand the micro-level threat, we need to pull back and observe the macro-level catalyst.
Part 3. The Climate Catalyst.
It's a proven neurological fact that human perception is 80 milliseconds behind reality. We literally live in the past, constantly catching up to the present moment, and this inherent biological delay blinds us to slow-moving threats. We simply don't perceive the gradual ecological collapse of our warming planet in real time. It moves way too slowly for our evolution to flag it as an immediate danger. But this invisible shift in climate, which medical societies have aggressively called the biggest global health threat of the 21st century, is exactly what's pushing pathogens out of the wilderness and directly into our homes. The data spells this out with grim clarity. Look at the case numbers in the American West between 2020 and 2025. They reveal a steady, fatal upward trend in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado.
The maps are just lighting up with red clusters. And the source of all this? The common deer mouse. Current estimates suggest that roughly 15% of all deer mice are carrying the hantavirus infection. It's no longer just some abstract danger out in the deep woods. It is already deeply embedded in our immediate environment. They're nesting in our sheds, our attics, and our garages.
The engine driving this convergence is extreme weather. Historic droughts are forcing rodents outward in a desperate search for resources, which brings them closer to human infrastructure just to survive. This dry period is then followed by intense rainfall, which suddenly and aggressively spikes their food availability. The end result is a massive population explosion. As the carriers multiply rapidly, their viral range expands into entirely unprepared territories. The shifting ecosystem isn't just our backdrop anymore, it's actively functioning as a delivery system for the virus. And with the rules of transmission changing and the carriers multiplying, we have to logically look at our defenses.
Part 4. The medical void.
This is the stark, terrifying reality of our current medical capability against this mutating threat. Zero cures, zero publicly available vaccines. Despite ongoing DNA and mRNA-based research at highly advanced facilities like the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases, the scientific consensus is totally uncompromising. A reliable, approved vaccine is still years away. The medical safety net you probably assume is there, well, it simply does not exist. Because of this massive void, the CDC's official protocols for handling an infestation are startlingly primitive. You really have to think of this as a grim survival manual. Your only true defense against aerosolized death is incredibly bleak. First, you have to wear a tightly fitted N95 mask and heavy rubber gloves. Second, you must spray all rodent debris with a heavy, highly concentrated bleach solution. We're talking 1.5 cups of bleach per gallon of water. Third, you have to let it soak for a full 5 minutes to literally chemically burn the virus into submission. And fourth, absolutely never sweep a vacuum. Doing so would launch the invisible viral particles directly into the air you breathe. We are out here fighting a mutating stealth pathogen with rubber gloves and bleach.
Part 5. The reality shift.
The illusion of modern medical safety has been permanently breached. The isolated luxury of a cruise ship, the assumed finality of a medical recovery, these are completely outdated concepts now. The Hantavirus outbreak proves that isolation cannot stop the Andes strain from passing directly from human to human. The 71-month survival glitch proves that this virus can turn a recovered human into a long-term stealth reservoir. The biological rules we relied upon to feel safe, the very boundaries between human and pathogen, they are fundamentally changing.
The undercode of our existence is being actively rewritten by a warming planet, and Hantavirus is merely one glitch that has surfaced into our awareness, exploiting our biological delays and our medical blind spots. So we have to ask the lingering question: as the ecosystem shifts and the boundaries break, what else is mutating in the dark? Drop your theories in the comments below and subscribe to